Hello, everybody. So it is Sunday, March 21st. I have for you another weekly reading wrap up. I read 4 books this past week. 2 of them may have been my own, but we're not going to talk about that. First up, I did finish up what I was anticipating to finish last week. I did actually end up finishing it before Sunday, but it's fine, we'll just count on this one. That is The Complete Jack the Ripper by Donald Rumbelow with the introduction by Colin Wilson. This is a true crime nonfiction book about Jack the Ripper. Jack the Ripper has never been one of my, it feels weird to say the phrase, but I say it all the time anyway, favorite serial killers. I don't care to learn about him all that much. And part of that has to do with the fact that he seems so long ago. But one thing that I did not realize, somehow, even though I knew that it was the 1880s and there were Civil War photographs, was that we actually have photos of his victims, and they are some gnarly photographs. Like, this book does have a lot of photographs in it. I'm not gonna show them because they are they're gory. Like, they are seriously intense, and they're black and white, so it's not like as awful as it could be, but just looking at him, it's like, this guy was not fucking around. And I guess, like, I knew that. Like, I mean, I've listened to the last podcast and the last episodes about Jack the Ripper and everything, but I've never really delved that deep into Jack the Ripper on my own. Like, this book was a free book that I got from, like, the library book settlement when I worked at the library because somebody donated it. And I never really thought about all that much. I was like, oh, Jack the Ripper, whatever, true crime. I'll take it, I'll read it sometime. I ended up really enjoying it. Apart from the photographs, which I think were what really tipped it over the edge for me, but apart from the photographs, I also really enjoyed the writing style. Rumbelow really kind of explores this in a way that makes it feel really, really real. And obviously it is real, it's nonfiction, but this book is from the 70s and he just makes it so detailed. And I mean, he does compare it to other serial killers. He talks about Peter Curtin a lot. He mentions Dean Corll, but it was definitely a very good one, and if you can get your hands on it, I know it's an older book. I don't know if it's still in print, but I'm sure you can find it on thrift books or something like that, somewhere used. I would definitely give it a shot, especially if you're into serial killers. I would say you don't even really need to be into Jack the Ripper, because I'm not. I'm giving it 5 out of 5 stars. It's honestly probably one of my new favorite true crime books. After that, I reread a Stephen King book, and that is The Dark Half. Fun fact, for the longest time with this cover, I thought this was just like a creepy face. It's birds. I for some reason never saw that until this time. But The Dark Half is about a man named Thad Beaumont, and he was a kind of a struggling writer, so he started writing these really, like, gory slasher horror thriller novels under a pseudonym, George Stark. And he gets kind of found out, so he decides to bury this pseudonym once and for all. This was a book that was 100% inspired by the Richard Bachman Stephen King ordeal. But the pseudonym kind of comes to life and starts murdering people. I will say, this is, I think, only my second time reading this book, which is ridiculous because I've always considered it to be one of my favorite Stephen King books. I just never reread it. Like, the first time I read it was so long ago that Goodreads says I've only read it once. Like, the first time I read it was before I started using Goodreads. But the thing about this book is it is so gory. Like, it is honestly one of the goriest Stephen King books. It is so suspensefully written. It is just, I just can't, like, the gore reminds me a little bit, how it's written, it reminds me a little bit of Thinner, which is a Bachman book, which kind of makes sense because this does deal a lot with, it is Stephen King kind of writing his way through Richard Bachman. You know, if you are unaware, if you're not super into Stephen King did have a pseudonym, Richard Bachman, which he published, I think, 5 novels under before it kind of came out that Stephen King and Richard Bachman were the same person. And then he's published a couple Bachman books since then, but the original 5 were there were the main 4, and then there was a 5th. But the ones that you'll see collected in the Bachman books, at least older prints will have Rage, which has since been discontinued because it was a school shooting book, and it was found in the lockers of a couple people who did some school shootings that were very similar to the one in the book. The Long Walk, which is my personal favorite book of all time, The Running Man, Roadwork, and then the other one is Thinner. And so those were the books that he published under Richard Bachman before he was kind of found out. And they are, I will say, kind of like in this book, I mean, it's not as dramatic of a difference because obviously Stephen King is a horror writer, but the Bachman books are so much bleaker than the regular Stephen King books. And so it's just, it does, this book does have the taste of a Bachman book. Out in 1989. So that's kind of when the whole Bachman thing was kind of winding down. And so it is, I mean, it is very much him working through that. And it's it remains one of my favorite Stephen King books. Like, I'm so glad that I reread it because I do love it so much. Like, it is so much fun. And I mean, as somebody whose favorite book is a Bachman book, that kind of, I mean, I don't understand why I like this one so much. I do love it, and remains one of my favorites. It does have that writery stuff in it, which I do like. I mean, I know a lot of people make fun of Stephen King because like main characters are always writers, but I like that. I'm a writer. I like the writery stuff. So yeah, I love this one. I give it 5 out of 5 stars. Remains one of my favorites. Then I did, totally read 2 of my own books. But here's the thing. I know I've read other ones than I've talked about before, but like, if I'm publishing these books and I get myself a copy and I put them in the book wall, and they're on the book wall spreadsheet, I'm going to count them when I read them, because of course I'm going to read them, because why would I be writing stuff I don't want to read? The whole reason to write is to write stuff that you want to read. So first up, I did read Spawn, which is by me, Aurora Dimitri. Spawn is about a heavy metal band in the early 80s who go to this heavy metal festival that just so happens to be on a rebuilt Spawn ranch. And then they kind of awaken this ancient evil and a bunch of people get eviscerated. Oh, this one's fun. My favorite thing about this one is the writing style, because it's more unique a little bit. This is a novella. It's a horror novella. It's only about 130 pages, but it is third person present tense, and it is just very rolling and informal, I will say. It's a lot of fun. I have a lot of fun with it, and I mean, I enjoy the characters, I enjoy the gore, I enjoy most of all the writing style. And I gave this one 5 out of 5 stars because it's my own book and fuck you. So, after that, I did read another one of my own books. This is my fantasy one, that is Circus Wings. Ignore the awful cover. This is about a girl who has recently been crowned the heir to the throne because she had a twin sister, and so when her and her sister were younger, were born, her parents decided that they would keep an eye on them throughout their childhood, and then once they reached a certain age, they would pick which one was going to be the next ruler of the kingdom. And so she was picked, and this main character, Alessandra, she has always been a little bit non-traditional. She has very much a environmental self-righteous streak, and so she decides that what she's going to do after she's crowned is that she runs off and is going to go join the circus and free these birdies, which are these bird people that she thinks should not be used in circuses as animals because they're too close to people. That's their first point of view. The second point of view was one of her guards. His name is Kai, which I know is a very, very common young adult name for like love interest. He's not her love interest, she's a lesbian, but it's him. He like kind of helps her out because he's very non-traditional as well. I mean, she picked him because he was non-traditional, and he ends up getting caught, and it's him just kind of muscling his way through all the various injuries he keeps collecting on his way to try and like just drag her home because he has had enough of this shit. Unlike the Spawn, my favorite thing about this one is the characters. Alessandra and Kai are some of my favorite point of view characters I've ever written. Alessandra is like, it's kind of become a trope that I've noticed in my own writing, is that my favorite female characters to write are the ones that are just so goddamn hard-headed. And like, that's the thing in one of my other books too, the Serial Killers with Cookies, Justine is kind of the exact same way, where she's so hard-headed and so secure that she's right, she's gonna do it, she doesn't care. I like that a lot. I like reading it. Kai is, oh, so dumb. Oh, he's so much fun. He's an idiot and he's so fun, and I like him a lot, and I love his parts because it's just, well, Alessandra's like kind of furthering the plot. He's just straight up trying to survive at this point, and he does have a very fun backstory that I really enjoy, and I'm currently I'm working on the sequels for both of these right now, but working on the sequel for this one, the point of view characters it's not Alessandra and Kai in the second book. I'm not going to spoil anything, but they're not the point of view characters in the second book. And it's been just like it's less fun for me because they're not. I mean, I do like them, and I do know this is what the story needs, but I just like if we could just do Alessandra and Kai all the way through the series. I mean, technically, I probably could. I'm the author, I can do whatever I want, but it's just I just love the point of view characters in this one in particular, and it's a lot of fun. I gave it 4 stars, because there are some plot holes near that I notice as I reread, particularly around Alessandra and Kai's ages, because I do say at one point that when she was about 10, she saw him for the first time and he was about 14. Later I say that he's about 23 and she's about 16, so just pick whatever age you want them to be. You know, Kai is probably in his 20s. We'll probably say that. Alessandra might be older than 16. She might be like 19. I don't know. So that's just what happens. Sometimes you have got plot holes. That's fine. It's not a big deal. But I did read this one. So these are the books I read this past week. It's a very good reading week. Maybe not in terms of quantity, but definitely in terms of quality. I think I did enjoy all of these quite a bit. The lowest rating I gave was a 4-star, and that was my own book, so that's a lot of fun. But yeah, that is all for today. I will talk to you later, and goodbye.